Great, great. I love this team. I mean, I don't know about you, but it's super exciting to see them, like how they're working. We know Chris Baum from a long time. He used to be working at CARTO and from Open Plans days. So we've had a relation with him for a long time, and it's impressive to see what a team of, like this size, like effectively working with the right tools, what they can produce, like so quickly, right? Those demos for me showcase, like in a way, a state-of-the-art web GISs, like location intelligence applications. It really, like changes, like the way you think about like what it used to take like months and now or years, they now take it, like into weeks, and with a user experience that is fantastic. I think, like talking about like what is the future in terms of as a platform, being able to enable teams like this to deliver this fast, this type of solutions, I think is incredible. I'm very excited about it. Plus, I mean, they're clearly powered by Frozen, which is one of the best. My daughter will love it. So yeah, so for the Keynote last session, we want to tell you a little bit about one particular example. Yeah, I realize I have this. We've been talking over the last 2 days a lot about there's a lot of new data available, right? And that there's never been a better time for geography. Not only for the applications and the solutions that we can build, but, because of that data, the capabilities that it provides us from an analytical perspective. So for the last session, I wanted to show you one of the analysis that we've been doing in our data science team, to showcase what is the power of leveraging these location data streams for inferring, like a business problem. So that's what we're going to be doing. And it's actually something very local. And I love it. Like in this conference, we've gone really local about New York. And I think, like food carts is probably one of the most New Yorker car-like thing. And it's a very interesting car-like business. If you think about it, the food carts are all around the city. They take some of the most expensive real estate that you can think of the city. And sometimes they're not the best quality. Just think about it. I mean, like we're talking about like, in front of the MoMA, in front of, like the most iconic places, like millions of tourists passing by, and you get like a pretty bad experience from a kind of like a food perspective, right? But it's part of, how it works. So we actually work with a company. Well, you also got them, like in incredible locations too, and like beautiful ones. But we're working with this company called Move Systems, based here in New York. Essentially, they are rethinking what, like the food car like business could look like. So first of all, I mean, like being, like solar power, like just trying, to, I mean, if you're saying not being smoky, like being kind of like cleaner, like safer. So they're kind of like rethinking the concept of like food carts as what they are, like an opportunity, to have a great experience. So they put them, like in all over the city, and they've also partnered with big brands like, Pan Quotidien, but like Starbucks, so on. Because at the end of the day, like we said, like those food carts are in like incredibly valuable kind of like real estate. So why don't like couple them with brands and and provide like a good customer experience? So that's what they do. That's how they are rethinking, reinventing the concept of food carts. Again, technology, so it's all solar power, with panels. So there's a lot of like what they're trying to innovate on this business, and there's a lot that they can innovate. So we worked with them, and we were talking about how we could actually help them with location intelligence. And there was a few things that, as they're expanding very quickly, they're now in 7 cities, I believe, they're starting to kind of have more of like a planning questions. So they have like questions around, where should they open the next cart? Where should they take, where should they place them? What is the potential market of a city? Like how many cars should they deploy there? What is the potential, from business perspective? How well is its car performing? Is it, performing to the standards that they believe, they can make in these particular locations? So this is kind of like site selection in a way to the power. I mean, like it is in a way like the dream of any site selection kind of like project, because you can move the store. So, you can say you have it one day in one place and the next day you have it in a different place. So you can test out a lot of things. You can test if the location is performing, if not moving somewhere, and see how it's going. So if anybody is thinking about like site selection as a one-off business, well, think about like a problem like this. They have to rethink every day, where should they place their food carts. So I thought, it was very, very, very cool. Plus food cars and food traffic, we thought like, also made a lot of sense. So we work on it. And the thing that we got from there was essentially the performance data. You know, how much their food cars are performing, how much business do they make. They give it a few of the locations, a time series data for it, so that we can actually create a model out of it. So only for New York City we did it in this case. So for each of the cards, we get, you know, like a performance, you know, like a curve of, you know, essentially how much revenue they're making per hour. So we made this analysis based per hour. And that helped us also to identify a few things and exclude food cards if they don't have like logical, I would say, like, you know, like revenue patterns, right? So if there's very spiky, they also send them, you know, like to particular events or, you know, particular cases, which might not have like something that you can actually correlate over time. So it's all the things that you have to take in factor. So what would be the traditional way of solving a problem like this, about finding out where to take the next food card? So the obvious thing, you know, people will start is looking at sensors, right? So we just saw it before, you know. It's like, well, let's try to understand the surroundings of where the food cards are. But there's a big problem. Not only census data is a year old, we were talking, it's also like census data is about where people live. And you don't go use food cards when you are at your home. This is then when you are at work. So you essentially don't have really good demographics about the people that are going, you know, to the food cards. So census data, you will see, it really just doesn't help you. So the other part that you will use is POIs, points of interest. What other restaurants, what other businesses are around, you know, that are on the same categories in food. So just to see, you know, what is the opportunity in there. So with the concept of like, if there's a lot of certain restaurants, likely of a certain type, likely that will be a good area, etc. So you do that by looking at what is the catchment area of the food cart. So you say like a point of interest, you get like the particular location, and you get all the POIs, all the other merchants, you know, within a radius, right? So that one, use it to characterize what is the competition, or more than the competition, the merchants that are around the location. So you do that. And then I'm gonna tell you, you know, like how you will do it now with location data streams, and we will compare the results. So we could use now, we talk about like MasterCard data, expenditure data. How is people spending on the areas could potentially increase the performance of the model. And the other is foot traffic. So how many people are passing by, which probably is one of the biggest drivers. So these two that I was describing are just new, right? So the previous one. So let's look at how they perform. The first thing is that we create a model. This is the base model. This is the base model just looking at census data and POIs, the traditional way, if you want to say it. And what we do here is like what you see on the graph, essentially is the actual performance of the car per hour and how we actually predict it, right? And actually the model is pretty bad. So we can tell you, like essentially, you don't have enough features, you don't have enough properties to explain the performance of the cards. If you're just using like census, very obvious, we know it. It just doesn't really describe based on the demographics of people live. But also, I mean, like it's just even the POIs alone is not enough. You will not be able to explain performance of cards based on these two properties. So let's look. So what we did is just trying to go step by step. So we use, we put MasterCard data. So when we put, MasterCard data, the model gets better. We're starting already, the performance of the model to get improved, and by a few points, and you see already on the graph, the correlation there. So it just gets better, and that makes sense, right? So if there's like an area where there's a lot of economic activity around certain areas, I mean, it's likely there's going to be people. Therefore, the cars will perform, better. That's the first thing. Second thing is we put then also the foot traffic data, and then it got really way better. So in this case, we actually know now, by any time, how many people, in this hour, how many people were passing by. And the model starts getting much, much more performant. Still not to the level that we wanted, but, it's still already, showcasing real capabilities for prediction. So this is kind of like, the type of analysis that you're going to see us making more. Is it showcase, how these new data layers not only, it gives you more precision, but the models will actually, perform better. And what we want to calculate with it is really what is the cost of not doing size selection by utilizing this data versus, using the traditional way versus the new way, right? So what is the cost of not updating yourself to this new type of data? There's another thing that this data gives us that is very interesting, these models, is that it gives us also the possibility to understand the features' importances. Not only we get the correlations, but we know which features actually were more significant to explain the performance. And the actual number one variable that or feature that you can detect it is actually the foot traffic, not of the hour, but in the previous hour. So, so you see, so you actually analyze, like what was the foot traffic that was in an hour before the actual selling, and you can actually use that to see like how is going to be the demand in the future in a way. So that's number one variable. Second is foot traffic within the hour. Then the day of the week for obvious reasons. Those things, like MasterCard transaction score, median rent, it's essentially, until you go to the end. So less importance. And why is this useful? It's useful because essentially it's allowing us not to have a black box. We can understand the model. We can test it. We can take decisions based on it and beyond, just following the map behind it. So we know now, like with this, that, like how you can understand as humans, we can explain, like the behavior of the model. And that is very useful. When you create a black box that you cannot explain, it gets hard to get implemented. Not only, you don't trust it, but how you explain to others that they should make these decisions. This gives them, like the data to explain, the decisions that they're making, are something that they can understand. So for me, that's also very, very important. Okay, so now that you have the model, what do you do with it, right? So the most obvious thing is, or the classical thing is that you're going to do predictions. So you do is like, think about like you grid the entire city, and now you calculate the potential performance of every place in New York. It's called projecting the model, right? So you calculate, what will be the performance everywhere. And there you start having already things like, okay, the average that you can make anywhere in the city goes at $2,700 per week, per truck. So, so that's what you do in there. Then the next thing that we can do is actually, like cluster by the highest revenue areas. So now we have areas with higher, like potential of revenue. We're only taking a little bit part of it. And even more, then you have the areas where within those areas is the most performing location. So just pick the top cells out of it. And that's what we're getting here, right? So we got that one, and that essentially is telling us, okay, what are the top 6 locations where they should, drive their food carts? So some of them, like as New Yorkers, probably some of them are obvious. So we know they're very popular places like the West Village, Dumbo, Soho. But there's others that are less obvious, like Corona Park. Why is Corona Park? Well, it's hard to understand, but depending on if it's weekend or weekdays, there's a lot of potential in those places based on people going to the parks. So there's a lot of things that you might not come so obvious, and that is very helpful for them. So so that was kind of an analysis that we've done, with them now to test this foot traffic and MasterCard data. And you're going to see us publishing more and more of these studies. And if you're interested in this type of studies, we'll want to know. And also, so to educate to the market, how this new data, can actually help to improve, some of these analysis. So that's very, very important for us. So that's actually, my last slide. We've been, during these 2 days, talking a lot about, how these new data, new capabilities. But like I said, the most important thing as an industry where we are is that there's a lot of capabilities that still are not being deployed. They're not being used. Most of the GIS or, location intelligence industry is still keep, doing the things, doing their projects the same way that they were doing it 15 years ago. Hasn't changed that much. Yes, it's more flashy, it looks better, it's more in the web, but the basics of some of the analytics hasn't changed for the last 15 years. And that is actually an opportunity, it's a challenge. And as a community, we do have to educate the market about how these new sources are going to get us to another level when it comes to location intelligence. So I want to leave it to you there, thinking what could you do now that you have access to this type of data? And we'd love to hear about it, and definitely, keep the connection for the rest of the year. So thank you very much for coming for locations, and yeah, looking forward to see you soon.